This is Duke University.
The great King Bhagirath in ancient India had not really honored his ancestors properly with water, and so therefore they were very thirsty. And the only way he could feed this multitude of ancestors that were there was to call down the heavenly river that was the Milky Way onto earth. And it was so great that only the god Shiva could break its force when it came to earth. And so quite frequently, when you see the images of the god Shiva, you'll see a river falling onto his head, and that's the celestial Ganges, Ganga, falling down onto his head. And that's where we get the origin of the Ganges River. So the Ganges herself is not only a goddess, but was called down to earth to feed ancestors. That's how central the idea of feeding ancestors is in the Hindu tradition. And so if there's an imbalance in the world, quite frequently in Hindu mythology, it's because someone's experiencing an imbalance. It's because they haven't honored their ancestors. And many, many Hindu myths, including the one I just told you, has to do with the way that you write the world and create a balance again in the world is to honor your ancestors, which I think is a wonderful idea and something that we could think of more generally as well. My friend who I just asked how he thinks about ancestors as a Hindu philosopher, he said ancestors are generally a pain. They're pests. They interfere with, when I don't honor them correctly, they interfere with my life, and when I do honor them correctly, it takes forever. So that's what he said about ancestors. Mind you, he's a rationalist, so there it is. But I also want to share two poems from my first book of poetry, both of which have to do with death rituals. The first is to give you a sense of Gaya, that holy city. One of the things that you'll see quite frequently is when a widow says goodbye to her husband, in addition to breaking his skull, which is in the funeral pyre, which is a way of allowing the soul to ascend to heaven, because the soul also emerges into the body through the skull when a person is born. It also leaves when a person dies. They also will break their bangles as a way of breaking a tie or their earthly tie to their husbands. And quite frequently in cremation grounds, you will see funeral pyres having been finished, but these very colorful bangles all around, glass bangles all around the pyre. It's a very startling image. So I'll read this first. Widow's bangles on the Gaya riverbed. They glisten by the pyre as the sun sets and the smoke rises, a final offering of gray in the shape of your body. Broken in crescents, they shine like doorways, beckoning my grief to pass through with the wind or the last light in pursuit of your soul. And the second poem is actually a kind of contemporary meditation on the offering of Shraddha. And the interesting thing here is urban folks who perform Hindu rituals will have, any number of ways of thinking about this that include contemporary idioms. And one of the things I wanted to do in this book of poetry was really think about what it meant to do a 3,000-year-old ritual and have a very contemporary life. And so this is a way of, part of what happens in some forms of Shraddha is you'll offer not only in your home, all of the different food and rice balls and fruit and water, but you will also offer the same things and release it into the river. And so this was a very dear friend. It was a meditation alongside of a very dear friend of mine who just lost his father, who did Shraddha into the Yamuna River in Delhi. And so this is a poetic homage to him as he's meditating on his own father and performing the Shraddha rite as a form of meditation on the personality and spirit of his own father. You never liked mangoes. They sat on the printed tablecloth near your elbow, close to your scowl, and the last of the dahi. Dahi is yogurt. A year after your death, I offer them with the carnations. I must honor your aversions and your silences, and not the shapes of my own forgetting. Mangoes hover on the Yamuna as I reassemble your form in fruits and garlands and whirls of ashes congealed in the current. The colors come together in the backwater. They form a face and then disperse, with no remains except my longing. this too was the play of our looks across the table when you were alive. Thanks very much.
Produced by Duke University. Online at duke.edu.